starting us off with Module 3, Urban Soil Invertebrate Profiles. And so I also just want to quickly reintroduce myself and remind you all who I am. I am Stephanie Steele. I'm a pollinator conservation specialist with Xerces based in Detroit, Michigan. I also work as an NRCS partner biologist. And through both these roles, I am primarily working with urban growers on pollinator habitat assistance and education and outreach. And all right, let's go ahead. Okay, so starting us off with this similar image that Stephanie Frischi introduced us to. It's really beautiful and really helps us to understand that, yes, there is a vast diversity of life within soil. And so I really kind of invite you to take a moment to look at this diagram and the diversity of animals shown here that could potentially be occupying such a small area. And again, nearly 25% of all organisms on the planet are soil animals. And then of those, 99% of them are invertebrates. And then of those, about 80% are insects. And so they range from microscopic to large. Those smallest that we see, some of the nematodes and some tardigrades and rotifers, smaller organisms shown in these kind of white bubbles. Those live in the water films. And then moving on to the mesofauna, the microarthropods, such as mites and springtails. These are living within the pores of the soil. And then macrofauna, we see them living within burrows or spaces that they excavate, larger animals both within and on the soil, or in the leaf litter itself too. And so throughout today's, or at least this part of today's short course, we'll learn that soil animals can play multiple ecological roles. And so the first role I want to introduce us to here is that of decomposition. And so we have some of our decomposers circled on this diagram, and those are animals who are breaking down plant and animal material into bits that then bacteria and fungi can more easily use. So helping break them down to smaller pieces that then they're more available. So the smaller the particles, the more niches and pores for then the bacteria to occupy. So this is a really important role. For example, the population of bacteria increases significantly on matter after it passes through an animal. So that animal's waste. So these animals are indirectly then influencing the soil structure by how their bodies are contributing to that organic matter of the soil. All right, and our next ecological role. So there are soil animals that will burrow or tunnel, and through this, they're mixing nutrients and minerals between soil layers. Then they're influencing the soil structure and fertility, thus enriching the soil. So this enriching the soil is another important ecological role. And then similarly, we see some crossover between the soil enricher and those with the role of soil engineer animals. These soil engineer animals, most notably these earthworms or ants and termites, they're those that burrow or tunnel. And through that action, then they're also carrying air and water down deeper into the layers. This then helps to aerate and hydrate the soil. Through this work, they also create channels for plant roots as well, which we might understand they could prefer to grow through these areas of least resistance. So it's helpful for that too. All right, and then invertebrate functional diversity. This can also lead to increased microbial diversity, so they're helping to influence these microbes. But there are other factors that also influence this microbial diversity, including pH or soil type and different plant communities. These are all important drivers of microbial diversity as well. And so soil invertebrates, they also can influence these microbial communities. They do this by dispersing microorganisms throughout the soil layers, through activities such as grazing on the microbes or by influencing other resources available to them, such as making plant matter, other detritus smaller. Also mixing those nutrients within the soil layers. And yes, okay. Here we have another example of a food web. So soil invertebrates are also really important in numerous ways to these soil food webs. This diagram on the left, it shows us some of the different roles and how these animals or other organisms can be interconnected. We see that these food web roles include various plant eaters, such as herbivores or pollinators. They could also contribute by consuming bacteria and fungi or other soil animals, whether they're predators or parasitoids. So lots of different roles. Everyone kind of has a way of, there's lots of interconnectedness throughout these animals. There's also lots of life happening underground, and much of it is out of sight. Stephanie really highlighted that earlier as well. And so today we're going to showcase some of these soil organisms that are particularly valuable to the soil health in urban ag systems. But before we get into some of these invertebrate profiles, I do want to highlight some of the varied sizes of these soil invertebrates. The smallest animal today that we'll highlight are mites, shown in this diagram on the right. It's compared to various size soil particles, different size categories of sand. And then the table on the left is showing the different size groups of animals discussed in the Farming for Soil Life book. So we won't discuss this microfauna group, but Steph did introduce it well to us. We'll highlight some of the mesofauna, mostly the mites and the springtails here. Notice the size ranges too. These are shown in the metric system, but then also in inches as well. And I'll have guides of this on their different profiles too, so you can keep track of how big or how tiny some of them are. And then we will actually spend most of our time talking about different macrofauna here, different arthropods and non-arthropods macrofauna. And so today I will be talking almost solely about arthropod soil animals, with the exception of one non-arthropod group, and that's earthworms. And so before we get into that, I did just want to give a brief overview to help orient and kind of make sure we're at least on the same page with arthropods. And so arthropods are invertebrates. They have exoskeletons, they have segmented bodies, and jointed appendages. Arthropod actually means jointed feet. So arthro means jointed and pod means feet. And because their skeleton is on the outside of the body, as they grow, they then must shed that. And so through this development, different groups go through different transformations to complete their life cycle. And so we can term them incomplete and complete metamorphosis. And so those with incomplete metamorphosis, they have young that look like smaller, kind of miniature versions of their adult selves, and they often have similar food sources. And so this includes groups of animals like mites and spiders or true bugs, like and grasshoppers. And these groups with complete metamorphosis, they have life stages that look very different from one another. The ladybug is a good example here. And these animals often have the different stages of their life cycle will have different food sources. So the adult will eat something different than the pupa. And yes, of course, this includes beetles like the lady beetle, but also ants or flies, wasps, and bees as well. All right, now for our first profile on mites. And then just a quick orientation for you for some of the things you might notice in the slides. So of course, we're working from our Farming with Soil Life workbook today. And so I have highlighted the page numbers that these different profiles correspond to. So if you wanted to follow along and look at those, you can. I also have the size ranges of these animals too, and then different taxonomy if you wanted to follow along with that as well. All right, so with our mites, a few descriptions on how you might be able to identify them. Mites have 8 legs. As we saw in the previous diagram, they're also very small, but they are still visible with the naked eye. They generally have these kind of pear or round-shaped bodies, and they are among some of the most diverse groups in the soil and are often very abundant. And mites are important to the food web with their role as decomposers and detritivores. They're essential for breaking down organic materials into bits, smaller bits used by bacteria. For example, there is a type of mite that can eat 20% of its weight in leaf litter a day. It's pretty astonishing. And alternatively, some mites, like this one shown in the middle photo, they're predatory on smaller soil life like springtails or nematodes or other insect eggs. And then mites can also live on the soil surface or within the soil layers. So even deep in the soil too. And I'll end on an interesting note of the mites and that they are diverse. The species and communities, they might also vary with soil type. And another thing on the photo on the right is that mites can travel and disperse themselves by hitching rides on to other insects. All right, so for our next animal group, springtails. Springtails are actually quite common, even in urban areas, but they are perhaps maybe an animal that you're not familiar with. If you're ever maybe wanting to go and try and find them, a simple activity you could do is to take like a shallow dish, maybe like a shallow clear Tupperware outside, find some leaf litter and kind of gently shake the leaf litter into the container and see what little tiny animals you might observe there. And if they are springing quite high and kind of sporadically or uh, with a little disturbance, then you have most likely found some springtails. And so I'll get more into their common name. So the common name of these animals, springtails, comes from the way that they propel themselves around using a structure called a furcula. So that's shown here in this bottom image, pointed with the arrow. It's literally springs open and helps propel their bodies up into the air, and they can use that to avoid predation. Springtails do contribute to decomposition. They will also help with fragmenting plants and fungi. They can influence the soil, microbe, and fungi communities through their predation or feeding. Springtails are either globular, like we see here, or they could be elongated. They can be different colors too. And they're often found on the soil surface in leaf litter, like I was describing, but also decaying logs, or you might find them within mushrooms that they might be eating. Those that live deep in the soil, though, often have no eyes or very reduced eyes, and also reduced spring. And now for a quick check-in. So this is another opportunity for you all to participate in the chat. So yes, we want to hear from you. And have you thought about soil invertebrates in your work before today? If so, please tell us how in the chat. So have you thought about soil invertebrates in your work before today? And yeah, go ahead and feel free to respond in the chat. Okay, here we go. I was like, I need to find my chat. Here's my chat. We have some responses coming in. All right. Have we had, maybe we are still waiting. Yes, we have an urban permaculturist. Wonderful. Someone wondering how fertilizers might harm them, people digging in the garden, digging when you're younger. I love that. Not so much, but it is interesting. Yes, thank you all. Now it's all about living soil. Yep. How can we better support them? Which ones to be cautious with kids? Yes, all of these are wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And feel free to continue to do so. I'm sure others will really enjoy seeing what has sparked your interest. All right. So moving on to insect macrofauna. So our first insect macrofauna will be ground beetles. Ground beetles, the adults in particular, they'll have these ridged wing covers, which we really can see well with this photo on the left. You can see the ridges, those lateral ridges on the wing covers. Helps protect their wings when they're digging in the soil. They are easily, most of these beetles are nocturnal, and so they're mostly feeding at night. And both the adults and the larvae Also notice the sickle-like jaws on the larvae. They're mostly feeding at night, and so they're excellent predators too, and can be really important for controlling crop pests like slugs and snails, who are also more active at night, as well as other insects and other invertebrates. These beetles are also, again, really good at their job at being predators, and they can eat up to 2.5 times their body weight per day. The larvae can consume, eat, or they'll prey upon and kill more than they consume. So again, contributing to important conservation, biological control, whether it's in your gardens or maybe your farms. Some of these species can also eat decaying plant matter or even weed seeds. So again, helping benefit us through those actions. Ground beetles in the soil, they'll live in the soil or on the surface or within the leaf litter. So they're interacting with a variety of different spaces here. They'll also overwinter in bunch grass clumps. You might have heard of beetle banks, typically mounded soil with native bunch grasses, maybe to a lesser extent, some native flowering herbaceous species too. But they like this well-drained soil, and so permanent habitat is really important for this group of beetles. Things of special note are that they do only have one generation per year. So insecticides or other pesticides or even tillage, those types of practices could have big impacts on them. This will actually be a common theme for many of our animals that we highlight today. So do keep those types of practices in mind. However, these beetles are long-lived. They can sometimes live up to 4 years. The females may guard their egg broods that they lay in the soil too. All right, and so now I want to highlight another group of ground beetles, but focus on their larvae. And so these are root-feeding beetles, such as click beetles or their wireworm larvae that we see shown on this right photo. Also scarab beetles, like these C-shaped grubs shown on the left, and weevils. Many of these grubs and wireworms are herbivores as they're feeding on plant roots in the soil, so they might actually then be causing some damage and might be considered, some might be considered as crop pests, but they are also burrowing in the soil, and then through that work, they're contributing to improving the soil structure. Though the adults can be problematic at times as crop pests, the adults are generally not crop pests. They live above the ground, and many of them can also be important pollinators too. All right, now I want to focus on fireflies or lightning bugs. These are easily recognized and iconic beetles, especially in the Great Lakes region and our surrounding regions as well. These adults have leathery wing covers like we see here, also kind of a helmeted head shape too. And of course, they have their signature luminescent organs, right? We really kind of see those at dusk and nighttime. These fireflies attract mates by flashing, using flashing patterns with their luminescent segments and organs. The larvae that we see below, they're predatory. They're actually really good hunters, and they'll search in burrows and tracking slugs and following slime trails, so often out at night too. And they also have luminescent segments, and because of this, they can commonly be called glowworms. Some of the adults are also predatory, but they can and will also feed on pollen and nectar. The larvae will overwinter in soil or under bark, and then their pupation, their development, occurs in the soil or the leaf litter. You often find the adults in tall grasses or field edges, maybe your backyard. And going back to their glow, it helps function to warn off predators and communicate that they're not so tasty to eat. All right, so now moving away from beetles and into another insect group. These are ants within Hymenoptera, which also includes bees and wasps and sawflies. These ants have a constricted waist, similarly with many bees and wasps too, and also an elbowed antenna, which we can see in this image, has kind of a bend in it here. But differently on ants is, if you noticed on their waist, they have these kind of two lobes, these two kind of bumps. And so that does differentiate them from bees and many wasps. Ants do live in large colonies, and they'll build these extensive, truly social nests underground. Some of the colonies can even be up to 12 feet deep with 10,000 workers. So truly a great engineering feat. Their excavation and mixing of soil makes them one of the most significant insect groups within these like soil engineers. But they do play multiple roles in the soil, the food soil web. They'll help through this work integrate nutrients, they'll help aerate and hydrate the soil, and they are also predators and can contribute to the decomposition of plants and animal material. So they do kind of a little bit of everything. Of note, as highlighted in this bottom photo, is a mound that ant mounding builts have created. They can create earthworks like this of 2 to 3 feet in diameter, and then they're often as high as well. So it's pretty amazing. All right, moving on to some of my personal favorites and pollinators and how different pollinators are interacting and contributing to soils. So soil is really important to a wide array of pollinators. Here are some of those groups that do interact with it. Some part of their life cycle, including different flies, wasps or beetles and bees, ground nesting bees. They make up the majority of our bees, including about 70 to 80% of bee species found in North America. Some wasps also build nests in the soil. They'll provision them with insects for their young, or maybe lay their eggs on different, like that scarab beetle larva. There's a particular wasp that will hunt and use that larva to feed its young. The flower flies, also called hover flies or syrphid flies, their larvae can be decomposers, feeding on plant matter in the leaf litter. Some of the beetles, like these soldier beetles, they have larvae that are predatory and also aid in decomposition too. But I do think it's most important to recognize that there are many animals, like Steph said, that live mostly above ground. but then do depend directly on soil for some stage of their life. And so that's mostly what we're seeing with these pollinator animals. And so a little closer at some of the ground nesting bees. I did mention about 70 to 80% of the species are ground nesters. And so within the US, that's about 2,500 to maybe 2,800 different species of bees. In the US itself, we have more than 3,500 different species of bees. That is a lot. That is a lot of different species, particularly when one non-native species like honeybees does tend to get a lot of the attention. And so, yes, we have a vast diversity of native bees here. Nests can be shallow in the soil, maybe just a few centimeters deep, or maybe up to a meter or more. We see a diagram of what potentially a ground nesting bee could look like, with a main channel down and then accessory tunnels off of that, within individual cells provisioned with pollen, where then an individual egg is laid for that bee. And so with these ground nesting bees, most of the species are solitary. With individual females, they work alone to excavate those nests, so digging those nests out. Here we see some females in these nests. They're about the diameter of a pencil, so they're very small, kind of looking like ant mounds, but the way that the mound is shown on the surface of the earth will be dependent based off of the different species. With them being solitary, these bees don't pose a health risk or a threat to people. They don't defend their nests because they are out busy doing all the work. They're out collecting pollen and other resources, nesting materials, and busy building their nests. These bees, like I mentioned, they're making so many trips between these flowers to collect all that pollen, also feeding themselves some nectar too. But they really are critical pollinators. So about 35% of our global crop production is dependent on some type of pollinator, as well as the majority of our wild and native plants. There are some bees that do have close associations with some of our crops, like squash bees. So they might actually be nesting in agricultural fields, or maybe like a sunflower field that's attracting a diversity of bees. They might actually be nesting within that field itself. And so there are practices like tillage or using different pesticides that could directly impact them. Along the same lines of importance on crops, some of the many different crops that they might pollinate, like I mentioned, squash, but also tomatoes or raspberries, apples, and of course, many others are very important and dependent on these pollinators. And then, of course, sustaining our native plant communities as well. All right, and similar to bees, we have ground nesting predatory wasps. So again, these wasps are solitary. They'll nest in the ground, similar behavior as those bees. Here's a sand wasp. Again, kind of small size, single like entry holes. They will hunt, the females will hunt for prey instead of the bees collecting pollen. These females are out hunting for prey to then provision their nests for their developing young. So different arthropods, especially caterpillars or crickets and grasshoppers, stink bugs, or even aphids. They'll take these back to their nest for their young to eat. Therefore, with this important service, they're contributing to crop pest control. And so this is very helpful. The adults that we see with this great golden digger wasp, they're drinking nectar. And so having flowering plant habitat is really important for their life cycle. Perhaps these flowering plant habitats are also their hunting grounds too. Differentiating them from bees. Unlike bees, they're tend to have a thinner waist. Not always, but usually they have more of this constricted wasp waist. They don't have specific pollen carrying structures because they're not actively collecting pollen, and they tend to have far less hairs. If they do have hairs on their body, they tend to be silver. Also notice the legs, they have kind of these spines. Those spines might help them with maybe carrying their prey. And yes, wasps are very diverse and beautiful and helpful in our ecosystems. And another pollinator to highlight are flower flies or syrphid flies or hover flies. They go by a few different names. These adults mimic the coloration of bees and wasps, like you see the yellow and black striping on the abdomen here. Tends to be a warning. They're trying to mimic these other animals that have a sting to warn other maybe predators to not eat me or I might hurt you. You'll also notice that they just have one pair of wings. Bees and wasps have two pairs of wings. Often their eyes are very large. They don't have that longer elbowed antenna. So those are some ways to differentiate these flies. Adults, like in this top photo, they're generally drinking nectar. They're visiting flowers to drink nectar. And so through these actions, they are a very important non-bee pollinator to crops and other flowers. Down here on the bottom, we see a larvae of the syrphid fly, this green legless kind of caterpillar-like larvae. They're important decomposers of plant matter in the soil, or can also be predatory, like we see here, for eating an aphid. And so they will also overwinter at various life stages in the soil or their leaf litter. This group being pollinators, again, they need this flowering habitat for their survival. And yeah, it's really important for the adults in particular, and also hunting grounds. And then aside from pollinators and pest control that we saw on the previous slide with flies, of flower flies, there's also many other families of flies that do also contribute to plant decomposition. These flies, as larvae, will help break down decaying plant material in the soils. Flies like these crane flies, they really are very notable, making very notable contributions to the decomposition of leaf litter. There's also all of these flies. So dance flies, there's this non-biting midge, long-legged flies, moth flies, march flies, snipe flies. These are all different examples of some of these important fly decomposers. And some of them will also still visit flowers and for nectar, or maybe and through this work, they're also pollinators to some extent too. Okay, so now moving on to non-insect macrofauna, so starting with spiders. So these spiders are another group of important predators. They have 8 legs. They have these 2 body regions. They have a cephalothorax, so head and thorax together with an abdomen. Here we see that again, cephalothorax with the abdomen. They have multiple eyes. They also have chelicerae. The chelicerae is used for injecting prey and sometimes digging also. These spiders are predatory throughout their life, from nymphs to adults. And remember, they have incomplete metamorphosis, so they're young, just look like miniature adults. And these spiders, they are actively hunting. And so then they do have these more visible, larger forward-facing eyes. We really see that well in the jumping spider here. This wolf spider too, you can see just on top of the head, 2 eyes at least there as well. Similarly with the ground spider, but it's not as easy to see in this photo. And so these groups are chasing down their prey in the leaf litter or on the soil. Yeah, these groups are chasing down their prey either in the leaf litter or on the soil. Other groups might spin webs directly on the soil surface, like here we see this funnel web, or maybe within soil tunnels or tubes. And so these then are trying to trap or ambush their prey. Spiders can play a role also in conservation biological control, because they are good hunters. So they can contribute to the control of crop pests. And again, they do rely on these types of permanent habitat plantings near agricultural fields. So those beetle banks or other native habitat plantings are really important for them as well. They're actually also sensitive to disturbance in these fields or maybe your yards, your gardens as well. Adult spiders can be long-lived, perhaps up to 1 to 3 years, but generally are having 1 generation per year. And some, like the wolf spider, can also provide parental care. You might have seen photos with wolf spiders where they have all their many tiny babies huddled on their backs. So that's them providing that parental care. However, though, disturbance can definitely greatly impact these spider populations, especially with them only having 1 generation a year. It could take a while for them to recover from disturbance practices like pesticides or tillage. All right, moving on to millipedes. So these millipedes have elongated bodies. As we can see here, they have 2 legs per segment. So here's a segment with 2 legs coming off. Here's another really nicely seen segment with 2 legs coming off on each side. So 2 pairs on both sides of their body. And so the word millipede, it actually means 1,000 feet. But I think it's kind of funny that most of them only have 50 to about 400 legs. It wasn't until recently that there was a species discovered from a soil sample 60 meters deep down in Australia that found one that had over 1,000 feet. The previous world record holder for the most legs of any animal on Earth was a millipede with 750 legs. So they have lots of legs, but usually it's not 1,000. Millipedes as part of their role, they have these chewing mouth parts, making them really good decomposers. They can then help fragment about 10 to 15% of annual leaf fall. So fragment that down into smaller pieces and then help facilitate microbial decomposition even further and the dispersal within the soil. They're also really powerful diggers, and some can excavate deep tunnels. We saw some of that images in those first illustrations I showed you. Surprisingly, though, they can be long-lived, up to about 11 years. Females have also been known to guard their nests with eggs. However, they do not provide care for their offspring. And someone in the chat, I remembered, mentioned who might be dangerous. And so millipedes are one of the animals that you might need to take a little more caution with if you do hold them. They can have defensive secretions. They can either smell terrible or maybe be toxic. So if you do hold them, just be sure to wash your hands and use care. All right, centipedes. I think at kind of first glance, they do look similar with millipedes, and maybe something that might be confused. They might get confused for each other. However, centipedes, you can kind of really see, especially in this top photo, their bodies are a bit more flat, so kind of squished. And then they only have one pair of legs per segment. So again, here's those segments, and we see one leg coming off, and so that's each side. So one pair of legs per each of these segments. So that's a good way to tell them apart. Tell them apart with millipedes. Their first pair of legs, like we see in this photo, it's modified into these kind of like pincher-like mouth parts that then they inject prey. They use that to inject their prey with venom. Most centipedes are predatory. They can be really fast runners and excellent hunters. Most are nocturnal as well. And they'll at least avoid light too, so they'll be living within the various layers of the soil. You'll find them under logs or bark or leaf litter, maybe under stones. For many of these animals, that could be, if you're trying to observe them carefully and respectfully, that could be something that you try doing, is gently lift up or roll like a log or something, or lift up a stone, gently move the leaf litter around a little bit and look inside and see who you can't find. And then of course, please try and put those materials back as best as you can and with care. Another interesting thing about centipedes is that they will also guard their eggs like millipedes, but they will go beyond that then and actually provide parental care as well for the eggs and hatched young. So protecting them or maybe help cleaning them. Yeah, just pretty interesting and not so common. All right, moving on to wood lice or isopods. They go by many different names. I'll get into a few more of those in just a moment. But these are actually crustaceans. Most are aquatic, but the group that we'll highlight today, these are terrestrial. However, they do still need moist places for their habitat because they will lose water through their cuticle. So because of this, they're found in moist places like leaf litter or under logs or stones. And so within these terrestrial isopods, there are these two groups. This first group, the sow bugs, we see here in this top photo. They have these two tail-like appendages on their rear that you see here. Those are called uropods. So that's how we differentiate these sow bugs from pill bugs, which we see down below. Pill bugs also may be called roly-polies. They can roll up into these very tight balls that we see in this image here. You're probably familiar with this, maybe particularly in your youth. An interesting thing, though, I do want to point out, though, is that about a third of the species in North America, they are introduced. So they're not native to here. They're actually originally from Europe. And this does actually include all of the pill bugs. So all the pill bugs were introduced to North America and are not native to here. Our native wood lice are the sow bugs, the top photo with those two appendage uropods. So do keep an eye out for them. See if you can't find them. They are most diverse, though, in caves or what's called littoral areas, such as near the shore, and especially down like in more like southern states too. Isopods, these wood lice, they are primary decomposers. They have these really powerful biting and chewing mouth parts used to fragment plant debris and also break down detritus. Something else while you're maybe carefully and respectfully observing some of these animals is you could try and take a closer look at their mouth parts. The mouth parts really do tell you kind of their role and what function they have and what they're eating. So take a look and kind of learn more about chewing and grinding mouth parts, what those could look like, or kind of more the pincher mouth parts like those of predators. So those are really telling and good observations to make. Back to some dietary choices of some of these isopods. Some do have preferences for leaves of particular species, like they might have preferences of holly over oak leaves. They also have bacteria in their guts to help them break down plants. And another interesting thing is that wood lice can tolerate heavy metals and they actually will accumulate them in their bodies. And because of this, they may be used to monitor bioaccumulation of contaminants. And so that could be an interesting study or research area for the future. All right, another break before we finish up with our section. So I want to do another quick check-in in the chat. I want to hear from you all again. Which group of animals are you most surprised to learn have a connection to the soil? Feel free to go ahead and tell us in the chat again which of these animals you're most surprised to learn have a connection to the soil. And I'm going to try and find my chat. Here we go. All right, someone said fireflies. Yeah, yes. Wasps, also agree. I love wasps. Very, very fascinating. How many bees dig in the soil? My goodness, right? Thousands, thousands and thousands. Spiders and fireflies. Yes, basically all the things that fly. Yeah. Yes, wonderful. These are all really great observations and connections. Sow bugs, they're overwhelming your garden beds. Yes, thank you all so much for sharing. Feel free to continue to write some responses to the groups of animals that you're most surprised to learn have connections in the soil if you'd like. And we will continue on. Yes, thank you so much. All right, so we have just a couple more profiles that I want to highlight. For our last profiles, these will be our promised non-arthropod macrofauna, the earthworms. And so these earthworms have these tube-like segmented bodies. You can see they look like a tube, but then there's each of these little segments. They also have a clitellum that houses their reproductive organs nearest their head. Here we see that outlined here with that arrow. It's also this darker area in the above earthworm. The earthworms will burrow within the soil. I'm sure we know this, but as they're doing this, they're also consuming leaf litter and the soil itself. And then through this work, they can then improve the soil porosity and increase water filtration. And thus, they're also increasing this nutrient transformation that's happening within the soil. So earthworms do alter soil properties in ways that are beneficial to plant growth by improving soil structure for better aeration or water intake and that water transmission. They also will accelerate the decomposition and improve nutrient availability to plants. So they're promoting this greater plant productivity. So I mentioned how they're helping move soil, but it is really notable. So they can move an incredible amount of soil. There's an estimate that they're moving 10 tons per acre per year, which I like hard to wrap my brain around. However, I will say though that only about 1/3 of our worms in the US, about 1/3 of our worms in the US are introduced species. And so it's only on the Pacific coast and the eastern states, so on the two coasts that have native species. It's thought that the central states, like here, like I'm in the upper Midwest, it's thought that glaciers wiped out our native earthworm populations here tens of thousands of years ago. So it's good to keep that in mind. And also what might be beneficial in some settings could be potentially detrimental in others. And so, for example, there's these introduced jumping worms like we have pictured below. And I'll go into them a little bit more on the next slide. But they can deplete the leaf litter. They don't mix the nutrients within the soil as they're depleting. They're consuming so much of that leaf litter and then not mixing it within the soil. This is increasing erosion or loss of nutrients. After they're eating that leaf litter, the castings that they produce don't have those nutrients available. And so it's reducing the habitat for other species. And so just having a blanket statement of earthworms kind of being the soil superstars is not always true in all settings and places or for all earthworms. And so, yes, a deeper look at jumping worms, which they do include at least 15 introduced species. These worms get their name, this common name, because they do this really wildly wiggling and thrashing movement. I mentioned that they alter soil structure, but also the chemistry of the soil, and this is particularly impactful in forests. They consume so much of the leaf litter that then would have provide nutrients for plants and habitats for soil inverts or birds or salamanders or more, that it is really detrimental to those other animals. Thank you. Their soil disturbance also then helps spread invasive plant species. And this group has become invasive, and they can spread aggressively by reproducing without fertilization. They can also survive cold winters as eggs within protective cocoons and may outcompete existing worm populations. And so a way to tell them apart, I want to draw your attention again to the clitellum. So let's first look at this bottom photo. You'll notice that the clitellum on the jumping worm is this kind of like milky white color, almost kind of gray colored sometimes. It's really smooth and it completely does encircle the body of the worm. In contrast, if we look at this night crawler here, it has this darker clitellum and it doesn't fully wrap around the entirety of the worm. The jumping worms are found across many states in the US now. East Coast, even moving western, some of the Midwest states, and then some of the Pacific Northwest states as well. If you are potentially interested in trying to know if you have them on your site, if you haven't seen them, there is this mustard extraction that you could try to sample. And that works by mixing 1/3 of a cup of ground mustard with 1 gallon of water, and you pour that slowly onto the soil. The mustard irritates the skin of the jumping worms. And then it slowly kind of drives them up to the surface where you can look and observe if they're there. Unfortunately, there aren't control methods. Once they're in an area, they are there. But there are methods that you can do to help prevent their spread. If you find them, don't release them elsewhere. If you're sourcing compost, make sure that it's heat treated to reduce those pathogens. You could also clean your vehicles or your equipment or even your boots. Brush those off to help reduce that spread. And then lastly, I do just want to say that soil animals make a huge difference in our lives. This is a similar slide that Steph showed, and I just want to re-emphasize and show the importance of what these animals do for us again. And so it really is helpful that we have them, and hopefully we've given you a snapshot of their amazing life that is often out of sight and underground. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have a few minutes and we do have a few questions here.
All right.
How about we go for those? One is back to wasps. The question is, how do wasps pollinate if they don't have pollen carrying structures?
Yeah, that is a good question. So we should mention that some bees are going to be the only pollinators that do have these kind of more intentional pollen collecting structures because their young eats, they're dependent on that pollen. They are actively out collecting it. Other pollinators like wasps, they still do have some hair on their bodies, and the adults are visiting flowers to drink nectar to feed themselves, or maybe hunting there too for their prey. And so as they're still visiting those flowers, there's some incidental pollination that's occurring as the pollen gets stuck on their body and going for a drink.
And then one more follow-up that's a different question, but also about wasps. Of course, they're really pretty cool and beautiful, but there's this concern about stinging. Any suggestions on how to encourage bees and wasps to nest away from places where they're likely to be where people are, like playgrounds or picnic areas? That's both to prevent stinging and also to help them avoid being killed because of that.
Yeah, sure. So trying to encourage nesting in certain areas could perhaps be done through expanding their habitat. So maybe planting some of those flowers or providing other nesting resources. So we talked about some of the soil or some of these, especially solitary bees and wasps, they might also nest in wood or stems. So having some of those resources available. I will also highlight and re-emphasize again that most of these bees and wasps are solitary, and so they are not as maybe aggressive as some of our social bees or social wasps. And so I think that would be that's probably a different a different conversation on how to, yeah, how to uh encourage those other social wasps elsewhere.
Yeah, complicated questions here, but and the answers. So thank you, Stephanie. We're at time now to have a 20-minute break here.